Happy Thursday if you're listening to this on the day that I record it. If not, happy whatever day of the week it is, as we have our weekly God Talk episode this day. And today I want to go big with you. We're going big. We're going really, really big, because this week I'm going to talk about big pharma, big business, and big church. So we're talking big today. I spoke last week about the shooting of the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, and there's been a lot of developments over the past week on that. They caught the guy. Interesting that it took that long. I was hearing some people say that they weren't going to catch the guy. This was intentional. Blah blah blah. I'm not into that conspiracy theory stuff, but I'm oftentimes wrong myself, and I was wrong on this. I thought for sure it was a professional hitman. He had no fear in what he did. He did it. There was the writing on the bullets. Originally, I thought it was engraved, but it was with a marker. So that did change my view on the whole paid hitman thing. But it was not something that we would have expected. It was like a 26-year-old kid. Now, certainly 26 years old is not a kid, but when you're 52, it is. And what's been interesting is the interest in it all, and not only the interest, but the lack of outrage, right? Like, there's a lot of people sympathetic to this kid, to this 26-year-old adult, this young man, for what it is that he did. I feel a little bit bad if my last podcast gave some sort of impression that I was sympathetic to what went on. I'm sympathetic to the fact that people are frustrated with the medical industry and insurance industry, but certainly was never sympathetic to the shooter and to the CEO getting murdered. And I don't think I gave that impression, because I would have gotten a complaint from someone and I didn't. But I just want to make sure that I was clear on that. In fact, as you learned more about the story of the CEO that was killed, assassinated, he didn't come from an impressive background. I think he was originally from Iowa. He was living in Minnesota. He started out in the company at the lower levels, worked his way up, father of two. It sounds like I haven't heard anything bad about him. Sounds like he was a really good guy that was committed to the company and really kind of made a name for himself while he was there and was promoted through the ranks. So why not the outrage? And I think there's two main reasons why we haven't heard a lot of outrage towards the shooting, at least from some different angles. You haven't heard a lot of outrage. And the first is, and this is just sickening. It's like the kid, the young man, he was attractive, right? He was good looking. At least, he had this major back issues, but there's a picture of him with like ripped abs, like a washboard. Like, how do you have back surgery and back problems and have abs like that? So maybe that was an older picture before he was able to, or before he had all of his back issues and his back surgery. But somehow you get a pass. You get a pass when you're hot. And honestly, I remember from a long time ago, just different classes I took in college and so forth. It's proven that, people who are attractive, that are good looking, get away with things more than people who aren't. And so, and I've seen this before, like, there'll be people in their mugshots and like, I hate to say it, but at least for a lot of the women, like, man, he's really hot. Now, if it was reversed, and girls actually committed a lot of these more violent crimes, I imagine you would hear the same thing from guys, right? But frankly, it's disgusting. And just because someone's good looking is no reason to give them a pass or to be more sympathetic for them for what they've done. In fact, they're without excuse, right? Because they probably haven't had a hard life. They probably had an easier life because they're probably treated better than most. And this kid, this young adult that did it, apparently has really wealthy grandparents. His attorney is like, if you're older, you remember the movie My Cousin Vinny, his attorney that his parents or grandparents hired for him reminds me of the guy from My Cousin Vinny. So it's not court-appointed attorney. This guy had a lot going for him. And people who knew him in the past, they all spoke very highly of him. So it will be interesting what caused him to do this. So we shouldn't feel sorry for him because he's good looking. Because he was good looking, he had a better life than most. Not to mention just the fact that he was raised in somewhat of a privileged background. And then the other reason that I think people are giving him a little bit of a pass is that there is this frustration about Big Pharma. Remember, the podcast today is about big. So with Big Pharma, people hate Big Pharma because a lot of people have been screwed over in dealing with them. Like if you've ever needed specialty medicine, you get denied, and it's a big fight. I was having some neurological issues a few years ago, and they wanted to do a MRI of my entire spine, and I mean, it took about 20 communications back and forth between the doctor's office and the insurance company before it was approved. And I can't remember how long it took. It took over a month. I'm currently waiting to get on some really expensive medicine for a lot of aches and pains that I've been having. And they told me to expect 2 months before the insurance approves it. And you know what? From the insurance perspective, yeah, they're like on the bullet was deny, delay, and I can't remember what the other one is. That's how they save money. I mean, let's be real. Like if I'm going to have to be on medicine for the rest of my life, if they can, delay it for 4 months, well, they've saved themselves, $1,600 a month on that medicine times, 4 months. They've saved themselves $6,400. Now, in the broader scheme of things, to them, is $6,400 a lot of money? No, but if you times that by millions of people, yeah, that's a lot of money. And over the life of that person and the company, that saves them lots of money. I get it, and so there's a lot of people who are very angry and frustrated. I mean, there's a lot of people it's worse than that. Maybe they deny treatment for cancer. You had the whole, I think it was Blue Cross Anthem that was going to limit how long you could be under anesthesia for certain procedures, which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. There should be outrage about it. But let's face it, like Big Pharma, big anything, like they're not in the business to lose money. Honestly, they're not in the business to help you. They're not. They're in the business to make money. I hate to tell you, but like most doctors, they're not. It's not about helping you. It's about seeing as many people as they can on any given day, coding it the best way that they can to make the most money. It's not like to help you. This isn't like Little House on the Prairie with the traveling doctor that goes around from house to house and probably lives in the same type house that the Ingalls did, but he's just doing it to help people. It's just not the case anymore. It's to make money. A Big Oil, their job is to make profits. Everyone gets all up in arms how much money these oil companies are making, and we're paying $3.50 at the pump. Listen, it's a supply and demand thing, and they're in to make as much money as possible. Credit card companies, banks, big anything business, their job is to make as much money as possible. It's not to help you out. But and so what you got to keep in mind is it's not supposed to be a parasitic relationship. It's supposed to be a symbiotic relationship. And so big business, with all the risks that they have to take and all the investments that they make and so forth, they want to make a return on the money. And where they can make a return on the money and it can help you out, now it goes from a parasitic relationship where just one person's benefiting to both people are benefiting. And then that's where, people get rich and other people get healthy. It's where it works out. There comes to a point where, too many people are getting rich and it's getting too expensive. And then, people can't afford it and people aren't getting healthy, or doctors' offices drop insurance companies because they don't approve things, and that gets their attention, right? It's this balance, because it's got to work for both parties or you don't have the business. So whether it's Big Pharma or big business, that's just how it works. But you know what? And this is a great frustration of mine. Like I'm not justifying anything I just said. I'm just saying it's reality, and I get it. I mean, you can like it or not like it. I don't care. It's reality. And frankly, it doesn't work. If it works, they stay in business and people benefit. If it doesn't work, they don't stay in business and other people aren't going to benefit. So it is that balance that must take place. Not justifying it. It's just how it is. Bigger frustration of mine is that's how big church has become. We can get all peeved off at Big Pharma. You can get all peeved off at big business. But you know what? Big church ain't any better, right? Big church they are as manipulative and making, on a different scale, of course, but making bank in much the same way that Big Pharma is and big businesses. And we don't talk about this in the church much, but that's why, some of these pastors make $350,000 a year. This is why, or more. I mean, there's certainly some that make like probably $1 million plus, especially when they sell their books and the other ways that they make money and so forth. They speak at conferences and different things like that. It's sickening. This is why I say that no one should get rich off the gospel. Not a pastor, not a speaker, not a financial guru, like even like a Dave Ramsey, if he's going to use it based upon the Bible, not a Christian entertainer, comedian. Like, no one should get rich off the gospel. Conversely, I believe that you pay a church worker or a minister of the gospel or someone, who uses the Bible for teaching and encouraging and supporting people, like you pay them a fair wage. And that's what you find at Light of the World. Like we pay our workers a fair wage. We want them to be able to live, middle class comfortably and to be able to support their families. But what a lot of churches will do, especially these big churches, they'll underpay a lot of their kind of grunt staff, and then they'll overpay their executive staff. And it's never been that way at Light of the World. I pay my employees in a closer relation to what I get paid than any other church that frankly I know of. But what you need to understand is like, big churches especially, most of them at least, not all of them. Rick Warren wasn't this way out in California. He took a very modest salary, even when he took his salary. In many years, he didn't even take a salary. So it's not all of them. But the vast majority of them, it's like that movie Leap of Faith. I mean, it's an old movie, but you need to see it. They are pillaging people and taking advantage of people. They're manipulating people. When I took a little over a year ago, I took 4 to 6 weeks off to just kind of regain my sanity for a period of time. And I think it was just 4 weeks. Well, I mean, I actually had a vacation, so I didn't take any extra time off. I just actually used all my vacation a year ago. But for 4 weeks, when I wasn't preaching on Sundays, I went to some different churches, and I went to one up the road, a very popular one. Now that Gateway's kind of fallen, it's probably the next biggest in our area, Milestone. And the head preacher wasn't there when I went, but the guy that was delivering the message, I mean, it wasn't a biblical message. They weren't quoting scripture. I had a lot of issues with how Gateway did things, but they would quote scripture. People were getting rich off of it and doing some manipulating, I think, but they were quoting scripture. Just they did some things that I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of. Well, and obviously that's come out later. Well, I wasn't impressed. I'm not seeing everything that like Milestone or some of these other bigger churches do. Like, I'm not saying that everything that they do is bad. I mean, they certainly know how to bring in the crowds, and part of it is that they know how to market themselves as the place to be, and they also know how to target people. So I had a coach for a while that had grown a church to he started it and he grew it to like 12,000 on a Sunday. And one of the things that he taught me that I don't do, but I'm aware of it. Like he said, when it's back to school time, when it's certain times where it's a good time to kind of get people coming to church again, you got to do a sermon series on, he would call it like heartfelt needs. And basically heartfelt needs are like marriage or parenting or, things like that. Like not necessarily Christian topics that you like, that are unique to the Bible or that the Bible even spends much time addressing, but are very like things that people deal with in their lives. You do heartfelt needs because it's what draws in the crowds. To me, it's a form of manipulation. Just like, honestly, like we've never had offering envelopes at Light of the World because frankly, offering envelopes are a thing of manipulation. Like it's there to make you feel guilty that if you have extra envelopes to remind you that you haven't given. You don't need offering envelopes. No one ties in cash. If someone's actually claiming it on their taxes, they're doing it in checks or stock donations or something like that. And so you don't need an envelope for that. We know how to trace it, and you'll get your statement at the end of the year. Offering envelopes are gimmicks. So I'm not saying like these newer churches that like they're just gimmicky. Like they use gimmicks, and churches for a long time have used gimmicks. I saw some video clips from, it was Prestonwood. They always have these big Christmas celebrations, and kind of another wealthy kind of country club church in Dallas. I'm sure they do some good things, but like their Christmas program, like you got drummers flying through the air. That stuff ain't cheap, people. And lighting and different things like that are better than probably any theater you can find, whether it's Bass Hall or anywhere in Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex. And we used to get so ticked off at the Catholic churches because they would spend all their money on organs and ornate architecture and stuff. And Protestants would always they would hammer on the Catholics for that. You could be like caring for the homeless, feeding, the poor, like whatever, right? But we're not any different. Like a lot of these big churches with all these wealthy donors, like we're not any different. Like we waste so much money on productions to give that wow factor. Like think about what we could be doing with that money to help those in need. Well, and then there'd be like, well, we wouldn't have that money if we didn't do that. Well, so we're teaching actually people that church is all about the wrong things. And so I've been to a conference at Milestone before where and I only went 1 year, where they invite pastors, and that's a good thing that they do. Like for free, they'll invite a group of pastors and they try to teach them how to be successful. So once again, that's not self-serving to them in any way. So I certainly applaud them for that. But one of the things that you hear is like, you got to identify the rich people, because you can't do anything without money. And once you identify the rich people, you got to get them involved, you got to get them invested, and then they're willing to financially back it. I get that from a business model. But you know what? From a pastoral model, I'm not supposed to treat my janitor any different than an associate pastor. I'm not supposed to look at the widow that has 1 or 2 pennies to give any differently than the person who's given $100,000 a year. And I have to tell you, like, for those of you who know me, I don't. I absolutely don't. And I refuse to. I was talking to one of my staff members actually this morning, and he's like, yeah, we actually love that about you, that you don't do that. I said, don't get me wrong. Like there's things in which like catch my attention and probably manipulate me. We all have things like that. I'm like, but when people are trying to do it with like money and influence, they're fishing with the wrong bait. You have the wrong bait when you're out fishing. You're not going to catch any fish with it. People will never catch me by influence and money, because it just doesn't work for me. But this church does that, and that's kind of their model. We had a member that went there for their women's event that they had yesterday, and they were telling me that there really wasn't really scripture taught. It was all about, they really emphasized widows and single people, single moms, and once again, heartfelt needs. It's what tugs on people's heartstrings. They're intentional about this, right? Oh, look at what so if you remember, look at what our church is doing. We're emphasizing, we're elevating this group of people, and to the people that are there, like visiting, wow, how noble is this that this church is doing that? But the message itself wasn't scriptural. It was just secular. There was nothing uniquely Christian about it, from what I heard. And I'm sharing the secondhand. And then they had everyone stand up. That was either a widow or single mom, and you were presented with this big, like 2-foot box with a bow on it that then you had to carry around for the rest of the evening. They're not dumb in doing that. Like if they wanted to bless someone, they could give them a $100 gift card. Heck, they could give them a $250 gift card. They could slot, these widows and single moms could slide it into their purses. You've now given money to widows to buy groceries. You're giving money to the single moms to help them buy groceries. It's not what they did. I don't know what was in the box. So I'm just trying to be as objective in how I'm communicating the story that was communicated to me. But I'm here to tell you that was intentional, because that's why churches have special parking for visitors that show up. They want to be able to identify the visitors so that they can treat them differently, that they can treat them special. Now, for the rest of the evening, you have the single moms walking around and these widows walking around. And the way it was presented to me, once again, I'm just sharing with you what was shared with me. It may have not been everyone's experience, but it was shared with me that as these people were walking around with the boxes that they were blessed with, whatever is inside it, there wasn't really anyone paying attention to the younger women with it. But the older women that were dressed to the nines, there was always almost a staff person that was near them and talking to them. couple that with firsthand knowledge of knowing when I've gone to one of the conferences there, they say you need to identify the people with money because they're the ones that, you can't do anything without money. Like, it's all a game. It's manipulation. Like, you can say, no, it's good business practice. You do need money. You do need this. That. No, you need Jesus. And you need to give them living water, and you need to give them the truth. And if that means that your church is smaller, then it is better to have a smaller church and people being fed the living water and the living bread of God than to make them feel good about themselves and just identify people that you can get something from. That's why on the sign regularly at church, I put, we care more about you. We care more about your growth than ours. And we don't care about the money. I have it's like 3 different like catchphrases that I say, but I don't remember right now. But it's like we care about you more than your growth more than us, and we don't care about your money. And so it's about how a church should be, but it's not great for growth. But it's not about that. It's not about big church. Would I love a big church? Absolutely, I'd love a big church. Not for my ego, but because as a pastor and like all of us, we associate bigness with greatness. And I'd like to think, I've made a difference. So don't get me wrong. We still have 5 acres next to us in the church. And before I take my last breath, I sure would like to see a building on it. But I also know that I'm not in complete control of that. I mean, we are, as all the members of Light of the World, we're in control of it. Like, how excited are we about our church? How much are we sharing it? But in the end, like, God's the one that's in control of it. And, I just try to be faithful with what he's asked me to do, and we leave the rest up to him. So for all of you that get irate about Big Pharma and at Light of the World, I guarantee we got a lot of people that don't like Big Pharma. We got a lot of people that don't like big business. I'm just encouraging you, if you're going to be upset about both of those, why don't you add big church on that as well? Because they really aren't all that different than Big Pharma and big business. Thank you for joining me for this episode of God Talk, and I look forward to talking to you next time. God bless and have a great day.